I took on Hacienda La Danesa outside of Guayaquil, and I'm just kind of coming back to my roots. I realized what I really love working with are family-owned and operated properties, just having that connection with the owners and with the staff intimately. And I love supporting family-run businesses. You know, in the world nowadays with tourism, seems there's more and more money getting in, and people are bought up and turns into bigger travel companies. And I just love working with small, unique places. So the way I'm going to kind of do this is I'm going to talk about each of the properties, but also how they combine really well. So, you know, you don't have to sell La Danesa and Hacienda Zuleta combined with Galapagos Safari Camp. These can be, if you have people doing a cruise in the Galapagos, you can use these as extensions as well. So I'm going to kind of break it up into 3 different itineraries, talking through the options. So just as a little recap, those that are not familiar with Ecuador and the Galapagos, I feel like I've been getting this question a lot lately, is just how do you get to the Galapagos? So anybody going from North America in particular down to Ecuador and the Galapagos, they have to fly into either Quito or Guayaquil. Those are the 2 main international airports in Ecuador. And I kind of listed there who flies to which. Obviously, Quito has more international flights coming in. Guayaquil is a bit less, has a bit less. I mean, if you're East Coast, so New York or Miami, you're going to get down to Guayaquil, no problem. There's great flight times. People like I live on the West Coast. We either connect via Panama City, via San Salvador. I don't know why I have Panama twice there. You know, going into Quito, you've got the options via Houston. You've got it via Atlanta as well, which are the additions going into Quito. You also have good connections in Bogota and Lima and Cartagena for these cities if people are carrying on and combining Ecuador with other destinations. So they're going to have to fly into one of these 2 international airports. And that's exactly where Hacienda La Danesa and Hacienda Zuleta are located. So Hacienda Zuleta is just outside of Quito for those that are flying into or out of Quito. Hacienda La Danesa is just outside of Guayaquil. And then here I'm showing the flight times and logistics. Say you're going to fly into Guayaquil, you would come to Guayaquil, and then it's an hour-and-a-half flight from Guayaquil out to the Galapagos to get to where the safari camp is. If you're in Quito, coming into Quito, there is a 2-hour direct flight, but a lot of the flights, I think there's only 1 direct flight between Quito and the Galapagos. Most of the flights do Quito, Guayaquil, Galapagos. So it's a very easy triangle to navigate, depending upon where people are flying into or out of and what they want to do on mainland. It's very easy to connect these. The flight in between Quito and Guayaquil is only 30 minutes, and they have probably 20 flights a day that go between Quito and Guayaquil. So even if you're flying into one city and out the other, you can do this as a triangle as well. So that being said, where I'm going to start out with Hacienda La Danesa. This is kind of the most simple itinerary of combining these 2. This is, as you can see, I laid this out. This is kind of the minimum you would want to do if people are going to the Galapagos and want a bit of time on mainland Ecuador. This is a 7-day, 6-night itinerary. Rather than putting out a number of days, I'm showing that literally people can leave their home on Saturday and then be back on Saturday, and they're going to be able to fit in 2 nights at Hacienda La Danesa, 4 nights at the safari camp, and then they're going to have an overnight flight home probably. So in this instance, they're flying into Guayaquil. They're going straight out to La Danesa. They're going to have that first afternoon. They're going to have another full day at La Danesa and then fly to Galapagos the next day and spend 4 nights out there and have a 2-day out trips out to outer islands and then flying back to Guayaquil and connecting with a flight home. A lot of those flights leave in the evening. So starting out with Hacienda La Danesa, again, this is just outside of Guayaquil. This is super convenient. I mean, particularly a lot of people, if you're booking people on cruises in the Galapagos, a lot of cruises, if you're booking packages, already have airfare included, and most of them include flights to Guayaquil. Guayaquil is the 2nd largest city in Ecuador. It's kind of the financial or economic hub because it's a major port city, but it's not really a city that people want to spend time in. I mean, Quito, yes, people want to spend time in because it's a historic city. Guayaquil is kind of a mega city, a port city. It doesn't have a lot of attractions for tourists. But the best thing is that Hacienda La Danesa is only an hour and 15 minutes outside of Guayaquil. And it's really only like an hour. That 15 minutes is just depending on traffic getting out of the city and out in the countryside. So people are going to fly into Guayaquil, even if they're coming in late in the evening. It's easy. We'll have staff pick them up at the Guayaquil airport, and then they drive that hour and 15 minutes out to Hacienda La Danesa. We do have helicopter service as well. I think it's about $1,200 one way that can land them right at the Hacienda if people have that budget and want that convenience. And the nice thing about this too is that, you know, the flights that are going from Guayaquil out to the Galapagos, the earliest flight leaves at 9 a.m. So, you know, people can leave at 6 a.m. from La Danesa and make that flight out to the Galapagos, no problem. The flight's coming back, they're getting in, you know, mid-afternoon, so then they could still have the afternoon at La Danesa. And the other thing compared to, say, Quito is that Guayaquil, there's no elevation here. You're at sea level, it's tropical, it's warm year round. So people that are worried about altitude or how they'll do at altitude that want to avoid Quito, send them via Guayaquil and have them come out to Hacienda La Danesa. So once they've arrived in Guayaquil, as I said, they'll be picked up by one of our staff. And then you cross the river and pretty quick you're out of town and you're going through beautiful, beautiful tropical lowlands. This is the kind of the banana growing belt of Ecuador. It also is an area that grow a lot of pineapple, mango, teak, I said pineapple, so all kind of tropical fruit. So it's really nice. Once you get out of the city, you're driving through this countryside and going through these little towns that are full of bright, colorful fruit stalls. So people kind of instantly on the drive are like, wow, I'm in Ecuador. You know, it feels like you're in Ecuador rather than many people fly into Guayaquil to stay in like an airport Holiday Inn or something like that. And they have no sense of that they're in Ecuador. They could be anywhere in the world at an airport hotel. Whereas this really gives, the visitor an experience of being out in the countryside in Ecuador. And so short hour through that countryside, plenty to see and do. You'll arrive at the beautiful entryway to Hacienda La Danesa. This is the driveway coming into the hacienda. They don't always have horses running at you. It's just a great picture. And this is actually teak wood. They grow a lot of teak wood and they make furniture at La Danesa as well. So you're coming down through this canopy of teak wood to arrive at Hacienda La Danesa. As I said, all the properties I work with in Ecuador and the Galapagos are family owned and operated. The family that owns and operates Hacienda La Danesa, they're the Olsen family, the Helg Olsen family. And as you can tell by the name, they're originally of Danish descent. So as Helg Olsen came and he established La Danesa in 1870, originally from Copenhagen, he was doing like electronic sales or something, fell in love with a local woman, had no experience with the countryside, fell in love with the countryside, bought this hacienda, this farm, and all the locals referred to it as Hacienda La Danesa, which basically means the Danish farm. So that's why the name Hacienda La Danesa. So this is his grandson, Niels Olsen. So Niels runs this with his wife, with his extended family. He lives there and runs Hacienda La Danesa. His wife, Romania, is one of the most talented dog trainers in the area. They have 2 little kids, so they're around most of the time looking after guests. Actually, at the moment, Niels is not around because Niels, he's really the general manager and runs Hacienda La Danesa, but he's currently Ecuador's Minister of Tourism. His term is going to end at the end of this year in December, and he can't wait to be back at Hacienda La Danesa full-time, taking care of your staff. So, interesting character. He's only 33 years old. He's one of the youngest ministers of tourism in the world, doing a great job for Ecuador. So he's not at the Hacienda as much right now, but coming in December, he'll be back full-time. So once you arrive, you come into this beautiful common area, restaurant, bar, lounge, which was just finished last October. They put a lot of money into this place to, increase capacity and service. So this is I think it's one of the most gorgeous lounge spaces in Latin America. It's warm and tropical here, so it's all open air, beautiful feature above this bar. So this is the bar area, lounge area, tons of really beautiful coffee table books to sit and peruse as you're sitting around. Incredible art collection of art that Niels and his mother had collected. This is all pre-Columbian ceramics that are around in the dining room. And as I said, it's all open air. So you're looking out onto the teak fields and, the pastures with the cows in. So you really have this beautiful countryside setting at La Danesa. The food and service here is top notch. We only have 7 rooms. So you have probably like 4 staff to every 1 guest there. I generally don't put a lot of pictures of food in presentations. I'm not a real foodie, but they really nailed it. Hacienda La Danesa, just, bringing in all these wonderful Ecuadorian flavors of tropical fruits and ceviches from the coast and chocolate, which they grow there on site. So really, really high level of food and service here. As I said, we only have 7 rooms, so kind of spread out around the property and little outbuildings. So it's a short walk from the rooms to the main common area. This is peeking in one of the garden cottages. This is called the original garden cottage, which is behind the Olsen residence. These are some of the restored stable rooms. I'm not going to go through every room category here. I'm just kind of giving you a sense of what the design aesthetic here is, what the quality is, what the rooms look like. So these are garden cottages rooms. And this is a room category. It's called restored stables. They just kind of have a bit more rustic, that kind of brick and exposed wood feeling there. Gorgeous bathrooms, huge high ceilings and beams. So again, just 7 rooms here. So it's a very, very small property. We do have a lot of people that are like multi-gen families that are getting together to go on a cruise in the Galapagos or do a land-based thing at safari camp. And they use La Danesa as like a gathering spot. So they'll have everybody flying to Guayaquil, and maybe, family members are coming from different areas. Maybe some are coming from Europe, some are coming from the States. or they're coming from different areas in the States, and they'll arrive and then meet up at Hacienda La Danesa for a night or two to kind of gather the whole family, get together, catch up, and then they'll all fly together out to the Galapagos. So keep that in mind if you do have, you know, a group where you could use 7 rooms. This is the perfect kind of property buyout for that. These are the restored stable rooms. They have a beautiful outside patios on them. So what there is to do there, you know, one thing about Hacienda La Danesa I feel is that I think it's a wonderful place to relax. You know, if you're coming in on a long flight, gathering with other friends, it's a great place just to eat good food, relax, enjoy the setting. Or if you want to do this after a cruise, it's easy. You know, if you've been out in the Galapagos for a week, people are quite exhausted after a time in the Galapagos. This is a wonderful place to come and just kind of catch your breath and luxuriate for a couple of days before going home. But if you're like me, you always got to be active. So things to do on the farm. My favorite thing, there's this beautiful river that flows through the property. No white water. It's just fast flowing water, and they have inner tubes. So you actually go out with the guides, and then you can float this for half an hour or an hour segments. And you're just floating through the countryside. You see people working in the fields. You'll see iguanas. You can see sloths going along. And, you know, it's hot and humid here. So it's a lovely thing just to be in the water and float down through these verdant gorges through the property. And they'll often leave bikes at the takeout spot. So then you can just leave your inner tube and then just bike back to the property. So they have a fleet of like fat tire bikes. So you can just cruise around the farm. This is a working farm, so there's a lot going on. There's animals being tended to. There's, you know, harvest going on. So it's just wonderful to head out on a bike and kind of see what's happening. They have a stable of beautiful horses. So there's fantastic horseback riding there. If you want to do like half an hour around the farm, or you want to go on their field across the main road where you're actually going through rivers and swimming with horses and stuff, you can do that. And then they have a lot of these kind of experience workshops, kind of interactive culinary experiences there. So they have Ecuadorian cooking classes, making marmalades and jams and tasting the different honeys they have. They do grow cacao on the plantation. They have a wonderful bean to bar chocolate making workshop. So you go out and learn about Ecuadorian cacao, toast the seeds, and then you go back in the kitchen with the ladies here and you'll make your own bars of chocolate, choosing your own ingredients, deciding how, you know, what percentage of cacao you want. And then it'll be packaged in beautiful packaging. And you can take that with you. It's one of the best kind of chocolate making experiences I've seen throughout Latin America. They do at La Danesa. They also have a beekeeping program, which is fascinating. I'd never done beekeeping before doing it at La Danesa, and I highly recommend if you've never done beekeeping, find an opportunity to do it. For me, it was kind of a life-changing experience. It was really fascinating learning about bees and their importance in ecology. So that's available. And then off the farm, you're only about a 45-minute drive to the beginning of the cloud forest in Bucay. And you can go on wonderful hikes there in the cloud forest, going to different waterfalls. There are a few indigenous communities there, Shuar communities you can visit if people are looking for more of a cultural thing. They have connections with great artists in Guayaquil, so they often do like an evening art scene tour that people want to do that, to go into different artist ateliers in Guayaquil. And then there's all of the banana plantations around, and they have a connection with one fair trade banana plantation where you go and, you know, learn the whole process of how they harvest the bananas, how they select them, how they package them for international export, which is really cool because people eat bananas every day. A lot of them come from Ecuador, so they'll, you know, people will never look at a banana a different way in a grocery store again after having that experience. You know, but again, it's a great place to relax as well. They're in the process. This is a render, but they're building a spa and wellness center there as well, which should be ready next year at some point. So that's going to be a huge thing. We get a lot of feedback from guests saying this place is, you know, crying out to have a pool. So that's going to be there next year. So having that spa and wellness connection with it is going to make it even more appealing. So someone asked about average length of stay. I mean, we have people that come do one night, that they have enough time, they don't want to stay in an airport hotel, they can do one night. I'd say most of people are coming and spending 2 or 3 nights there, but we do have some people that come and spend longer at it as well. But I would say that in connection with the Galapagos, generally 2 to 3 nights is what people will do at Hacienda La Danesa as timing there. So moving on to the Galapagos. So you've been at La Danesa for a couple of nights after your international trip, and now you're time to move on to the Galapagos. So simple, you'll be transferred back to the Guayaquil airport for one of those flights between 8 to 10 a.m. and you'll make the 1.5-hour flight out to the Galapagos. Here I work with the Galapagos Safari Camp. It's one of the very first properties that I represented. It was actually the property that really got me thinking about representation, because when I was working at a tour operator, Geographic Expeditions, I met the owners, Michael and Stephanie. I fell in love with them. I didn't quite understand their concept. I was like, why would you go to the Galapagos and not go on a cruise? I didn't really get the land-based thing, but they had this wonderful vision. They're like, look, people don't want to be in crowds of people. They don't want to be on these set itineraries. That's not the way we travel. So they have this idea of bringing the African safari concept to the Galapagos, where you're in luxurious tents, but during the day you're going out with your guides, still going out to outer islands and doing what you would do off of a cruise, but it's much more customized and private. And I just believed in them, and I started selling it and started getting some of the best feedback I got of any travelers in the Galapagos. And so when I started the representation, I was like, I need to work with you guys. They're just lovely, lovely people. They raise their children there on the property. So it's extremely family friendly, and just a really unique thing in the Galapagos to have this kind of passion project by this amazing family, started up and still owned and operated by them. So Safari Camp is located on Santa Cruz Island, which is kind of the main principal island. In the Galapagos, you fly into a little island, Baltra, here to get to Santa Cruz Island. And where they are in the island, so you do have a lot of land-based like hotels. You've got Finch Bay, you've got Picaya Lodge, you've got these other luxury hotels. They're all around the town of Puerto Ayora, which maybe has like 30,000 people. So it's a town, where most of these hotels are at. The unique thing about the Galapagos Safari Camp is they're 30 minutes from either of the ports where you would board boats. They're up in the highlands. It really is this kind of out of Africa experience, a safari experience of getting up there. Is that there's no trace of human civilization. You really are up in surrounded by the national park of the Galapagos. There, the driveway into the safari camp, there's tortoises everywhere, so you're often having to stop and let tortoises cross the road as you're going out to reach the camp. And they chose this spot just because it's an amazing spot where you have, even at nighttime, you can't see a single light of human civilization from their vantage point. They're kind of on top of this old volcanic crater looking out over the Bering Islands. It's so serene. All you have is the sound of the wind through the trees here, and sound of owls and the finches and the crunch of grass as tortoises are roaming around. So it really is this like visceral feeling when you get there, like, wow, I'm in the Galapagos. You're in nature. You're not in a hotel in a town of 30,000 people. That's not what you come to the Galapagos for. You're coming there to be immersed in nature. So that was why they decided to build this lodge as is. So this is kind of the main lodge and kind of common area, the indoor area, which not a lot of people spend a bunch of time indoors. Beautiful wraparound porch. You can see the view of the ocean from there as well. So in terms of accommodations at the property, so it's a small place. We only have 9 tents. And then we have 1 3-bedroom villa, which is a house, not a tent. So we'll just have a look at the tents. All of the tents are the same. They're kind of spread out, each maximizing their viewpoint and their kind of privacy from the other tents. So as you can see here, looking out from inside the tent, you have a view of the ocean and your veranda outside. And it's just a lovely feeling to be like, wake up in the morning, all the sound of bird call as the sunrise is starting, and just start your day with this natural flow of kind of the earth waking up, rather than being in a boat cabin listening to a marine diesel humming all night long and being woken up by a ship's tannoy. It's just the experience is completely different. You just have space, time and space to reflect and enjoy where you are. So here's the interiors of the tents. They can do up to 3, so they can do like a king bed plus an additional bed in here. They can do 3 single beds. So often for families of 4, they'll have 2 tents. The kids can sleep in one, or the parents can split up. But, this is an area, there's no venomous or poisonous animals. So it's safe, for kids to be in a tent adjacent to their parents there. So another view of the tents. And these are the ensuite bathrooms there. So you have, 24/7 hot water, which is all done through a solar system. They're completely self-sufficient rainwater collection. There's no fresh water in the Galapagos. So as part of their sustainability efforts, they built geomembrane rainwater collection systems. So it's really kind of an off-the-grid project, which is unique. Everybody talks about sustainability in the Galapagos. You can't really get much more sustainable than a tented camp that can eventually just be lifted and moved and let nature take back over. They didn't have to do any, crazy construction here to do this. As I said, so we have the 9 tents, and then we also have a 3-bedroom, which we call the family suite. This was actually Michael and Stephanie's original home when they were raising their children there. Now they're off. They live in Switzerland now. Their kids are almost going off to college, those little babies you saw in that initial picture. So this house this works really well for if we have larger families. This is a 3-bedroom, 3-bath home that's just adjacent to the lodge. We do have a lot of people that want to come to the safari camp for the exclusivity and the level of service and the privacy of the excursions, but they're just like, I don't want to do tents. So we do have this as an option as well. So beautiful place to come and stay, but you're coming there to explore the Galapagos. This was the premise that Michael and Stephanie started with. Was they were saying, okay, what are some of the problems with current tourism in the Galapagos? One is that cruises, they have set dates. There's no flexibility. It's like, this is the program, this is the price, you join it, you're along as a part of a big group doing exactly what everybody else is doing. So they wanted it to be flexible and customized. We don't have any fixed dates. So you contact us and we'll arrange their program based on the dates that people want to travel, assuming we have availability. We'll do a minimum of 2 nights. People stay up to 7 or 8. But I'd say the kind of medium is mostly 4 and 5 night stays is what people come and do there. People will have a private guide allocated to them upon arrival until the departure. And then as you're working with us and booking it, we are going to choose kind of what islands they go to and what activities. There's a much more, customization options for people staying here. It's not a fixed itinerary. So we kind of choose, we want to make the program fit their travel style, the age of the children, et cetera, when they're there. As I showed you in the sample itinerary, doing like 2 nights at La Danesa and then 4 nights at Safari Camp, this is kind of an example of what they would do. Like, this is our most popular combination as a classic safari, where they'll arrive, they'll have a day with a private guide in the highlands, right around their Safari Camp, going to see the giant tortoises. And then day 2, they'll go off on a day yacht trip out to an outer island to hike and snorkel. Day 3, they'll have a day on Santa Cruz where they'll have about 15 different excursions they can choose from with their private guide. They'll do another day yacht trip to an outer island to hike and snorkel and then depart. So this is, pretty kind of our most popular layout. And of course, you can add a day here to add another island. You could take a day away if you only wanted to do 3 nights. That's an option. So even though you're based at the safari camp, you still are going out nautically. You need to go out to outer islands, to the uninhabited islands, to see the array of wildlife. So we do this via day yachts. We have about 3 different day yachts we work with. They're not exclusive to safari camp. We buy space onto them. And these yachts were based on Santa Cruz, but these are the islands that we go to. We go to Bartolome, North Seymour, South Plaza, and Santa Fe as our main island destinations, which really gives you a great array of wildlife. Some are shorter navigations, like North Seymour and South Plaza are only about a 45-minute to an hour navigation out. Santa Fe is maybe about 2 hours, and Bartolome is about 2.5. And again, this comes down to, if you're booking people here, maybe you say, look, they really want to do land-based because, the mom or the dad is prone to seasickness. So they want to minimize time out in the open water. Well, during their dates, let's get them to North Seymour and South Plaza and do other stuff on Santa Cruz to avoid the long navigations. Some are much better for snorkeling. Some are better for, walks and stuff. So we kind of customize the itinerary for clients on that. So, a typical day, you wake up there, you might be leaving the safari camp anywhere between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning to drive 30 minutes down to the water. You're boarding the day yacht, navigating 45 minutes to, up to 2 hours out to an island. And then you're going to land with your naturalist guide, go do the hike on that island to see what wildlife is, native to that island, and then back on the boat for lunch. And then you'll head off and do a snorkel session on that as well. So each of those days is like, go to the island, do a hike, and then do a snorkel session. And then you're generally back at the property. On those day out trips, you're back between 3:30 to 5 p.m. So you still have time to enjoy sunset. Apart from the day yacht trips where we're located on Santa Cruz, there's, as I said, dozens of different excursions people can choose from. You want to go visit the Charles Darwin Station in Puerto Vallarta, we can do that. We can go sea kayaking in Garapatero Beach, visit craters. People love keep going into the tortoise reserve or just seeing the tortoises that are roaming through the camp. And as I talked about customization, so we do have an option, unlike a cruise, that people are like, we want to do wildlife, but hey, we'd really love to do like surf lessons for the kids one day. We can do that. Take them out to Tortuga Bay, have a surf instructor, have a day on the beach. Family can surf. I just had a family of 27, and all of them went for a day surfing, and they actually said it was their favorite day on the islands. And they're out in the lineup, and there's like iguanas swimming around you and sharks in the water and stuff, which is just super cool. People that are scuba divers, we can arrange, for them to go out and do a couple tank dives during the day. This is something you can't do off of a cruise. So it just allows this level of customization and flexibility, which you can't do on a cruise by, when having people stay at a land-based place like safari camp. Some people, maybe one of the days, like we don't have a more relaxed day and have half a day at the beach. And then half a day back at the camp to enjoy. We have great bike routes around on Santa Cruz, visiting different farms and seeing wildlife. You can go sea kayaking, from these different bays with the guides. And the unique thing about safari camp, as I said, rather than being on a cruise where you're back and you're in a dining room, always with other people, or you're in your cabin listening to a marine diesel running, at the end of your day, after your adventures, you come back to the serene, safari setting of a camp, and you've got the plunge pool to relax in and watch the finches come and use the pool as a bird bath as well. We have a beautiful sunset platform. So every sunset, we set up all the drinks and hors d'oeuvres here to watch the sunsets from this viewpoint, which is spectacular. We can arrange yoga classes here in the morning for people who want yoga as part of their program. So, sky's the limit as far as what we can do in the safari camp. And then you finish the day with, incredible food. The chefs there, it's a 2 women chef that were absolutely fantastic. And you go to sleep under the stars. I don't know why that picture didn't show up, but it was a great picture of the stars above the tents. So that's safari camp. Let me just review questions real quick. So I think I covered your question, where do the yachts depart from? They either depart from the Itabaca Channel or Puerto Ayora, and it's a 30-minute drive from the camp to either of those. And then, I talked about the time. How do rooms accommodate parents and children in La Danesa? So we can actually do up to 4 in a room, or we actually have, most of the rooms are done in like 2-room blocks. So there's a building with 2 rooms with a pass-through. So there are connecting rooms there. So moving on to the last property, Hacienda La Danesa. Here I'm showing another example. This would be maybe people are flying into and out of Quito. They're not going to do anything in Guayaquil, but they want to spend time in the Galapagos and they want to go to Hacienda Zuleta instead in the highlands. This one is only a day longer than, say, doing La Danesa and Safari Camp. And that's because I'll explain why. So if you're flying into the Quito airport, most of the flights, particularly coming from North America, land in Quito quite late at night. So anywhere from 10 p.m. to midnight. The Quito International Airport is an hour outside of downtown Quito. So, unless people are going in and want to see Quito, like it's doing that transfer and checking in your hotel at 2 a.m. in the morning is difficult. So in this case, I'm saying if people are coming in, just stay at a nearby airport hotel. We have a Wyndham there. We have a wonderful place called the EB Euro building. There's a Holiday Inn, which is actually one of the nicest Holiday Inns I've ever stayed in. You're 5 minutes from the terminal. You arrive late at night, sleep, and then the very next day you're back in the terminal and you're flying straight out to the Galapagos. And then you would be doing, a 5-day, 4-night program as I described there. And then going to Hacienda Zuleta afterwards. Hacienda Zuleta for me is best. I think La Danesa can be done before or after the Galapagos, no problem. It's easy logistically, and also the experience. As I said, there's a lot to do, and it's also a great place to relax. But I think Hacienda Zuleta really makes the most impact on people going after the Galapagos, and it works out logistically much better. So in this case, people are leaving the Galapagos, they're flying back, say on this Thursday. Could be any day of the week. I just put these in here for reference to show that you can do this from, weekend to weekend, just 1 week away. And then they're going to have afternoon at Zuleta, a full day. And then the next day, they're going to have an additional day because they're going to go back to the airport. In this example, on a Saturday, they're not going to have to be at the airport until like 9 p.m. So they've got an extra day there, and then doing a red eye home. Where Zuleta is located. So here's the Quito airport. As I said, it's about an hour drive into downtown Quito. It can be more with traffic. But where you fly in to the airport, we'll pick guests up, and then you're going up the Pan American Highway. You can actually cross over the equatorial line, and then you're coming out to Hacienda Zuleta. So it's about 90 minutes to an hour and 45 minutes to get from the Quito airport out to Hacienda Zuleta. You're crossing the equator at that time. Do keep in mind that it's about 9,500 feet or just shy of 3,000 meters. So there is elevation involved here. It's not, as high as like if you're going to Cusco, Peru and Machu Picchu, but you do have the elevation aspect here. Flights here, they leave a bit earlier from the Quito airport. That's why doing Hacienda Zuleta before going to the Galapagos is a bit harder, because you're having to leave at you have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to then get to the airport to fly out to the Galapagos. It works much better on the way back because the flights from the Galapagos land back in Quito between 3 to 5 p.m. So, figure from landing and 2 hours, you're there at Zuleta, you're there basically perfectly in time for dinner and to enjoy the evening there. The flights, like as I said, do generally, most of them in North America, land late and depart late. So this works out well on the back end that you've come to Zuleta, you spend 2 nights, but then that last day you have kind of a full day to enjoy Zuleta, and then you're transferred in the evening to the airport for the red eyes back to Houston or Miami or New York there. So that's why it works better at the end. Why I think this is such a spectacular combination with the Galapagos is that the Galapagos are quite, barren, volcanic. You're really there for the wildlife. And when you come up here after the Galapagos and you're driving through this beautiful Andean countryside, green, lush fields, snow-capped volcanoes, it really is impressive. And it's just like super Ecuadorian, Andean. It's different, from the Galapagos. The Galapagos, I wouldn't call it Ecuadorian. I mean, the Galapagos is the Galapagos, but this is like the essence of it is very intense. And it's not just the landscape, it's also you're getting up into the highlands where the local people, the Quechua speaking people are in their traditional dress and they're out working in the field. So it really is like a completely different environment from the Galapagos that you're going into. So this is looking down on the Zuleta Valley. They have about 4,000 acres of cultivated lands here, and then almost all the mountains behind it are under protection by the hacienda as well. This hacienda, it dates back to 1691. It's one of the most historic haciendas in Ecuador itself. It dates back to the time when the Spanish were coming and giving these huge haciendas as land grants. A lot of them have been broken up, but ones like Zuleta have stayed in families. This is a working farm still. So you're coming to a place that, I mean, there's a couple hundred people that work for the hacienda. They're cultivating crops, they're milk, they're raising horses, tons and tons of agricultural activity going on at the hacienda. And it's also community. So the name Zuleta comes from the local indigenous community of Zuleta. These women are Zuleteñas, which you can tell by their bright embroidery. That's their identity as Zuleteña. So you're coming into this place has incredible history, the connection with the community as well. And then as far as the family owned and operated slant, so this hacienda, I said it was built in 1691. It was owned by the Jesuit church for a while, but it went into private ownership. It was bought by this guy in 1898, Leo Neris Plaza, who was then president of Ecuador. And so it's been in the same family since 1898. They bought it like February 19th, 1898, and it's still owned and operated by the Plaza Lasso family. So this guy was president and bought it at the turn of the century. And then his son was Ecuadorian president as well, Galo Plaza Lasso. So the best way I can describe it is like they would almost be like the Kennedys of Ecuador. Like we have the Kennedys here, and they had their beach compound, Kennebunkport, which is quite known spot for the Kennedys. This is the Plaza Lasso family. They had Hacienda Zuleta was their country estate where the family got together. So you are checking in when you come into this presidential lounge, and like the pictures on the wall are amazing. This is Galo Plaza with Harry Truman in the Oval Office. Here he is with Nelson Rockefeller. So just an incredible family history. And you're coming to stay at this family's home. This is Fernando Polanco Plaza. So he's grandson of the most previous president there. And he's the general manager, one of the most fun, full of life, gregarious guys you'll ever meet. And his aunt Margarita as well is always interacting with guests. So you're talking with this incredible family and their history in Ecuador. All of the people that work here, they're all from the community of Zuleta. This is their daily dress. This is not a uniform that they wear, but this is their daily dress as Zuleteñas. So you just have this beautiful history of the hacienda combined with the bright colors of the local people. It's a really intoxicating thing to arrive here. And I'm just going to show a couple pictures because this is a sprawling, it's like 250,000 square feet is the entire hacienda. And just spending a day just roaming around here and like looking in all the different rooms and the beautiful roses everywhere. And this is the grand dining room there, and every little thing is an artifact and has history there. Wonderful places to sit in front of the fire, have a whiskey, read some books. This is the Hall of Geraniums, which is a passageway where multiple rooms are. And then they have all these multiple lounges, common areas, and the staff are bringing out big plates of cheese that are from the hacienda and goblets of wine in front of the fire. So again, just an awesome place after you've been in the Galapagos to come up into the Andes and have this around you. We have 20 rooms there. I'm not going to show you all of them or go into room categories, just show you a couple of styles. Every single room is different. This is a very, very old building. Most of these rooms were the childhood rooms of, the sons and grandsons of the Plaza Lasso family. So each of the room has a name like Margarita or Fernando or whatever. So kind of cool history in each of the rooms as well. So been on the rooms, the food, as I said, it's 4,000 acres of a working farm. So everything you eat here is pulled basically directly from the earth during the day and cooked up by their chefs there. So you really can't get much more farm to fresh food. It's now all these fancy hotels. Oh, we're farm to plate. We're farm to plate. And Zuleta's like, yeah, we've been doing farm to plate since like the 1600s, because that's what you do when you have a big working farm. And not just the ingredients. What I love about Zuleta is that a lot of their dishes and recipes, when they bring them out, they're like, we've served this on the same china since 1915, and there's a story behind this recipe, how it happened. We had the visit of the Queen of Spain here, and she liked lemon trout. So you have like this incredible culinary experience, which is not done like elevated fanciness. It's like farm fresh food, but everything has history to it that you eat there. And then in terms of what to do there, I mean, this is a massive, massive hacienda and community. So these are all these different points of interest. The waterfall and mill the community stuff, the trout pond. So there's so much to go and explore. All of these lines are different color-coded pathways to go to the different areas. It is mainly a working dairy. They do like 80,000 liters of milk a day and produce 17 different varieties of cheese, which are sold around Ecuador. So you're going to see the people out bringing all the cows. They're being milked 3 times a day at the hacienda. So you often wake up in the morning and you see, you know, the women bringing all the cows into the milking barn, and people will be out there just observing this going on. It's really fascinating. You can visit their cheese factory there to learn about the history of the cheese making at Zuleta and see the, you know, the daily cheese production going on. They do raise horses there as well. They have their own breed of horse called the Zuleteña, which is like a mix between a quarter horse and a palomino, I think. And a lot of people come to buy horses from Zuleta because they're fantastic horses. So horseback riding is a big thing there. This is going up the San Pedro Valley just behind Hacienda Zuleta up to the Condor project. And you can see behind these riders, these big earthen mounds are actually Karanki pyramids. These are archaeological mounds that are there. There's something like 130 of them on the property. So the horseback riding there is fantastic. People that don't ride, of course, you can explore the hacienda by foot. We have mountain bikes. We now have e-mountain bikes. We have horse-drawn carriages, so you can kind of choose how you want to explore. You have the host and the staff there to help arrange all of this. Great bike riding, you know, lots of downhill you can do here on country roads or single track. They do a lot of conservation work there. This is the Condor Wasi, it's called. They have a project. They have a full-time wildlife biologist on site who does a condor rescue and rehabilitation project. So they actually have captive pairs there that they're doing like captive breeding program to try to increase the number of wild condors in Ecuador. They're only down to like 300 or left. So Hacienda Zuleta is like the last chance for the Andean condors in Ecuador. So people usually ride up there or walk up there and then spend an hour with a biologist to learn about the Condor Wasi project. There's tons of Andean spectacle bears that are roaming around here. These are the only bears native to South America. They're harmless. If you see one, that's going to run away from you. But they track about 24 different bears there via GPS collars around the property. So you will learn a lot about this conservation work and see condors. And I would say you probably have a 70% chance of seeing a spectacle bear when there. And then you have wonderful interactions with the community there. So they do some wonderful like embroidery classes with guests, with local women, just understanding the meaning of the embroidery, why women choose certain patterns, why they choose certain colors. And then you learn the stitches. They'll do a little pattern for people and you sit around with the women and do that. Bonfires in the evening, and just wonderful people. You know, I think that for me, the history, the landscape, the culture that you get in Zuleta is something so unique. It's like if you're only going to do one thing on mainland Ecuador, this is really an impactful experience. So that's it. And I'm going to leave you with, if you wanted to do all of this together, if you wanted to spend a couple nights at La Danesa, a couple nights at Zuleta at the end, and still do safari camp, it's looking at like a 9-day, 8-night program. This is kind of the shortest I would recommend doing it. 2 nights at Danesa, 4 in safari camp, 2 in Zuleta. But of course, if people have 2 weeks, add another night at all the properties or more. So that's the way it would work out logistically. And that is it. I am going to, so yes, all 3 properties are fully inclusive. So it includes your activities, it includes all your meals. Alcohol is not included because it's taxed like 33% in Ecuador. So alcohol is not included, but all the meals are included there as for excursions. Peggy, yes, we do have our own naturalist guides at safari camp. Everybody's allocated a private naturalist guide upon arrival. Ali, what airlines fly to both Guayaquil and Quito? Yes, it is American Airlines is the only one, but at the same time, you have code shares like you have Avianca via San Salvador and also Houston. You have Avianca also flies to JFK, so that would connect where you could fly Avianca to Guayaquil and then come back United via Houston from Quito. So there's ways to do it with all these code share partners.